You guys ready for this project? Anybody's excited?
Yep.
Great. As I said, it's a big project. It will go over 2 lectures, today and tomorrow. We will try to do our best to do as many as today, but the most important thing that you guys follow or understand the steps of this project, since, as I said, there's too many technologies involved here. Like, we're going to use the Firebase, we're going to use the backend API, which is the moviedb.org. Okay, so is anybody did an account with the MovieDB to get the API key?
I made.
Okay, and you get the API key. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I said, to start, I have here the boilerplate. I didn't even clean it up. I will, I think I open it with Visual Studio.
I have a question. What do you advise to make it with yours with you right now, or just watched and make it after class?
It's fine. You can start, because the reason, if you work with me, you will get some errors, and then you can ask me, it's like, why I get this error, and that will help in the learning process itself. Sometimes I might be a little bit fast. Stop me right away. Tell me, wait a second, why you did that, or why you doing it this way, and I can break it down in a different. Hey, the whole idea here for you guys to learn how to make big applications, or applications that involve many technologies. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the class, it's very important in the interview process, because think about this: if you're in an interview and you're showing your work up front, the interviewer will not going to ask you questions that you don't know. He will you actually redirecting the questions toward your projects that you're familiar with. So he's going to be asking you like, oh, how did you do this page, or how did you build this component? And then you're going to start discussing the stuff that you already know. So it's a great technique to redirect an interview by showing your work toward a question that you know their answers. All right. So definitely you have to show that in your resume. List down all the technologies we're going to use. As I mentioned, we're going to use Firebase authentication. We're going to be using React routing, dynamic routing. We're going to be using context API. You guys learned about the context API last week, and you know it's lifesaver. Instead of just keep sending props toward many components. Okay, so the first step, what I will do, clean up here, because it's have multiple. Delete all of that. I don't need that. I'm even going to delete the app.css. Right click, delete, move to the recycle bin. Now let's fix our broken app. We don't have the web vital anymore. I just deleted that, and I can remove it from here and remove it from here. Save my app, save my index, go to the app.js and clean everything here. Save that. Also, I'm going to go to the index.html. I'm going to clean it a little bit here. I don't want all this meta tags. So I'm going to remove them. Everything under the viewport. Oh, I need the viewport to make the app responsive. I need the favorite icon, which is currently is the React icon, but you definitely can change this icon to make any icon you wanted for your app. Then I'm going to change the title here to React Movie App. And you have a couple of comments here that definitely we don't need them. Save that. Now it's much nicer and it's easy to read index.html. So this is the cleanup process. Now, what we're going to need for this application to make it happen, we're going to need 3 libraries. And the 3 libraries that we're going to use, the first one, definitely React Router is a must. So we need the React Router because if you take a look at our application or what we're trying to build, you have multiple pages. See here, I'm in the register. Click here, I'm in the login page. If I go here, this is the home page. Okay, so I have the multiple routes. So definitely I need the React Router. So this is the first library. Second library, we're going to use Firebase authentication. So you need the Firebase library in order to use the Firebase authentication. The third one, which is an optional, is Axios. Axios is a library that will help you to send requests to servers similar to the Fetch API. If you prefer to use the Fetch API, definitely you can use the Fetch API. It's just an alternative. So these are the main libraries, the 3 libraries that we're going to use in this application. So Axios, Firebase, and the React Router. So the next step, I'll go ahead and install these 3 libraries, which is npm I, short for install. I'm going to type in Axios. This is the first library. Second will be React Router DOM. And the final one is the Firebase. And that's we'll go ahead and download the 3 libraries that we're going to need for this project.
You stopped your npm, right? And now you make a new command, right?
Yeah, or you can open a new terminal. You can always click in this plus to open a new terminal. But if you're running React, you stop it, yes.
Can you write the command in a Slack, please?
Sure. npm I, short for install, Axios, Firebase, React Router DOM, and finally is, yeah, this is the install 1, 2, 3. There you go. While this 3 libraries is installing, we're going to use Bootstrap for styling. For the Bootstrap, I'm going to use a CDN. So in order to use a CDN, I'm going to go search for the Bootstrap. I'm going to go to Bootstrap 5. So once you go to Bootstrap 5, you search for the first link. It's going to give you the CSS style sheet here for the Bootstrap 5. And that's the one that I want here. I'm just going to click in the copy to the clipboard. Once I click copy, I go here to my index.html. This is my single page that will be rendered, and paste it right on top of the title. And that's it. I should have now Bootstrap, and I can use the Bootstrap classes in my app. Save that and close it, and it's still running. While this running, I will start using the React Router. And as you know, in order to use the React Router, you need to wrap your whole application with the browser router, right? So I'm going to do it in the index here. I'm going to go to the index and import. And you need to pull out from the library that's called React Router DOM. I'm going to pull out the component that's called browser router. And that's the component that I need to wrap my whole application with, because it will allow me to mess with the URL or tap into some of the URL functionality, and they use the nav link and all of that features. I will give it an alias. I don't like the browser route. I'm going to call it as router. So I'm going to change its name to a router. Now, I don't need the strict mode. So now I need to wrap my app with the U component, which is the router here. Okay, so this is the very, very first step in order to use the router. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. Don't hesitate to ask any questions. Now, after my component get installed, let's plan our pages. I'm going to have multiple pages here. Just the login and the register, I'm going to create them as folders because I'm going to give them some CSS. So I'm going to do the login, which is inside it. I'm going to do the login.js. And inside my pages, you click in the pages, you create another folder. I'm going to call it register, or you can call it sign up. Doesn't matter. Sign up or register is pretty much the same thing. Register.js. Only this two because I'm going to have their CSS files in the folder. But the rest of them, I'm not going to use separate CSS files. So I'm going to create the components right away here, which I'm going to have the homepage.js. And also, finally, is the movie details. Movie details. That's when the user click in a movie and go to the details page. So this component should render. Okay, mainly these are my pages. I'm not going to use any other pages, and you can see them here. This is the home page. This is the login page. This is the register page, and as you can see, they are pretty much the same. And I can't see any movie detail. I need to either register or login. And this is the movie detail page, in that case, okay? Just to get an idea what these components are. Okay, there are some shared components. One of them is the navigation bar. You see the navigation bar is shared by all the pages here. Even the login and the register, they're sharing the navigation bar. So I need to have some components. So the components folder will have the shared components across the pages. And inside these components, I'm going to have navbar.js. All right, now the all empty JavaScript files. Now it's time to just create a dummy functional components for them. So I'm going to use my snippet, RAFCE, inside the login. Now I created the React component for the login page. Now I can close it. And the register.js, RAFCE, can close it. In the home page, I can create RAFCE, and I can close it. And now in the movie details, RAFCE, save it. And in my navbar, RAFCE, and save it. Good. That's for now. Now in my app.js, as you can see, it's empty right now. Here, I can import route and routes. from my React router DOM, because I'm going to need to have a routes component that will wrap each single route. And now I'm going to start create my routes for my application. And my application should have, even before the routes here, so actually I need to have a div and put the routes inside it, because I want the navigation bar to be shared across all the routes. So the navigation bar have to be not part of this routes. So I'm going to get my navigation bar here, which is a component right before all the routes. So every single route will have the navigation bar render in them. So I will import the nav bar. Which I need to import it. React wasn't smart enough to, Visual Studio Code wasn't smart enough to get it. So I'm going to need to import nav bar from, and I need to go to components and go to the nav bar. So nav bar. So now I have the nav bar will always be shared with any of the routes, which is currently just have the dummy text nav bar. But now let's define the routes. The first route is going to be for the home page. And I can close it like this. And I'm going to do the path for it. If you remember, the route take two things, path and element. The path will be the home page, and the element will be, and we have an element here, which is a page, which is the home. So I'll do home, close it. I need to import the home as well. Import home from pages inside home. Good. So that's for the home page. Now let's do the login page. Route path equal /login. You can call it any /login /sign in. You're the developer here, so you can call it whatever you want. You're in control. So my component is called login, which is this component here. Login. Oops, I didn't close this route. Okay, I'm gonna copy this route. Actually, I need to import it. 1 second. Import login from pages, login page, login. Save. I'm going to import the register as well from pages, register. We need also the movie details. Import movie details from pages, movie details. So we have all the imports that we need. Now we can define other route. Register, which is going to be the register component. And finally is the movie details. But the movie details, we have, let's say 20 movie, or we have a lot of movies here. We want to be specific about which movie we want to see its details. So take a look when I click here or let's go to the register. To use Google. Now I logged in. Let's go to any details for any of this movie. Notice that there is an ID of the movie after the details. So it's very important to identify which movie that we're going to see its details. So this one is 526,896. So if I pick another movie, you see the ID here is different for that movie. So each movie it's a unique ID. So how come we're going to put this route? How are we going to write it down in the path? This is a dynamic field, which we can give it a variable name like ID, for example. So I'm going to put /details and put a colon to identify that this is variable. This will change by the movie ID. So if you remember that dynamic routing, details / and this what comes after the ID, it could be any number, but this number will be my ID variable. Okay. And in that case, I will see the movie details. And I can save that. So now we created like the tree for the application. And again, this is called dynamic routing. And you should, in interviews, they ask about dynamic routing, how to use the router. And it's good to write in your resume that you're familiar with the React router and dynamic routing. So this kind of terms that's highlighted in your resume. Any questions so far? Anything that you guys don't understand so far? Anything confusing? Okay.
No.
Perfect. Now let's kickstart this application and see what we're going to see. npm start. And let's see. And I'm going to keep the bootstrap open. So we're going to take a look at a couple components that we're going to use, and we can copy their class names. Okay. Have another application running at the npm start should run right now. Okay. Anybody start applying for jobs or not yet?
Not me yet.
Okay. So listening.
Just searching and found that sometimes Amazon can also need 2 years experience of front end.
But you can show your work. That's the beauty of creating a portfolio and having a GitHub account that show your work. Because yes, they measure it by 2 years, but if you show that you understand it, this modern technology front end or all this, again, you just apply. Was your portfolio, was your web page, was your GitHub? Never know. Trust me. I always tell my students, it never hurt to knock on a door, right? Never know.
Yeah, and the interesting thing that they don't need React, just JavaScript, HTML, and CSS.
That's even better when so you have a plus now, right?
Yeah.
And keep in mind that Amazon is built with React. And you can tell that if you go to Amazon.com, you will see this. You see this icon here, which is the React tools. Here it's red because we're in the development. If you go to Amazon.com, you will see this icon turn into blue, indicating that the web page was built with React. So now I'm in the home page. This is the navigation bar. It's shared here, and I have my home page. If I try to go to login, this is the route. You see the navigation bar and the login. If you go to the register page, okay, which is my pass here, you will see you'll have the navigation bar and the register. Perfect. So it's working. You can go to the details and put any number, which is going to be the ID. I can put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, doesn't matter. It always will take you to the movie details component in that case. Okay, so this is the map. Now we have to go to every single component and try to make it look much better. Navigation bar, actually, I need to build the navigation bar and I need to interact with the server. There's so many steps that we have to go through. But now we're just building the tree of the application or a path of how we're going to continue building this application. Okay, before I move forward, I need a piece of information that I wanted to share it across my component. Or this state, I wanted to share it across my component. And this state there is a user that currently logged in or not. Okay, so I want a state that tell me or indicate to me is there is a currently logged in user or not. And this state, I will use it as context. I'm going to use the context API to share this state with multiple components. Okay, and instead of keep passing it with props. So I will start that by creating this state here in the app on the highest level component, which is the app. So you probably know that you have to create a state constant equal use state. It will be imported. You see now it's imported from React. And initially, you can give it an initial value or not, because if you didn't put any value, it's going to be null. So there is no user logged in initially. And I'm going to call it current user, or you can call it anything you want. Logged in user set current user. Okay. So this piece of state will tell me if there is a logged in user or not, because I'm going to need it in the navigation bar, because the navigation bar will change its content if there is a user logged in. If you take a look at our app, my navigation bar now have the search. It have the name of the person who logged in, and you can't see the login button, or you can't see the sign up button, because now the content of the navigation bar actually changed. If you log out, you don't see the search bar, you don't see the person who logged in, and you only see this two button, login and register. Okay. So this state, it's very important, and it will be shared across the navigation bar, across the home page, because also the home page need to know if there is a logged in user or not, because if there is a logged in user, I will allow him to see the movie details. If there is no logged in user, he have to log in first, right? So as you can see, the home page, the navigation bar need to know this state, if there is a current logged in user or not. Okay, so this state, I want to share it with the navigation bar and the home page. To do that, the easiest way is to use the context API. So I can create a folder here, call it context. And you can call it anything. I'm going to call it auth context. which is the authentication context. And to create a context, anybody remember how we can create a context? It's very, very simple. You need to use the create context from React. You see, once I select it, it's important. So I want to create a context. And this context, once I execute this function, I need to store it in a variable. So I'm going to create a constant auth context. And the reason I give it a capitalized letter here, because creating a context will give you back a component. Okay, so whatever you're going to get back is a component. Okay, this component will be needed by other components, so you need to export it. So here I'm going to export this component, and that's it. Only 2 lines to create a context. Use the create context function, execute it. It will give you a component, and this component, export it. Very simple. Any question of how you can create a context? This is number 1, creating a context. Step number 2, using this context. Okay, so any question about step number 1? Okay, now what is the data I want to put in this context? It is going to be the current user. So to make this data available to all these components, I need to wrap the context to all this component. As I said, the context is just a component, so I can simply import it. Import auth context from context, and now host context. And actually, I didn't export it as a default, so I need to destruct it. Now I have this component that I just created, which is auth component, and I'm going to wrap it up. I don't need this div anymore. I can wrap everything here with the auth context. Okay. Now this auth context is not the component that I want. This is the provider. So there is a consumer and provider. Here, I'm providing the data to all these elements or all these components. So I need to select from here dot provider, because now this is the context provider that will provide data to all these components. That is children components. Whatever this context data have, it will be shared across all these components, and they can tap in to this data without you don't have to send or pass the data as props. Okay, how, or the question now, what is the data that I want to share across all these components? What is the data? Is the state here, right? The current user state. I want any of these components like the login or the home page to have access to the current user, right? So there is one prop here, which is called value. And this value, take an object, and this object, you can pass anything as key value. So you can put current user, colon, current user. But with the ES6 syntax, if the key same name as the value, you can omit that and just put it this way. Okay. So now the current user state can be accessible from any of these components, either in the navigation bar, the home page, login, register, and home details. Okay, so now I provided the data to these components. This is step number 2. And the last step is to consume this data. Whenever I need it, I can consume it. Okay, so creating context is very simple. 2 lines of code. Use the create context function. It gives you the auth context, which is a component. So this context have a provider component that take only one argument, which is the value that you want to share across multiple components. Any questions? Anything confusing, guys?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, good. Good to hear. All right. So now I can use this current user state in any of these components. Now let's start with the navigation bar, because this is going to be used a lot. So for the navigation bar, I will quickly go to Bootstrap, and I go to the nav bar and find a navigation bar. And here you have nav bar expand large, light, which is the color, and background color, whatever background color you have. So you have these classes. I'm going to keep it on the side for now, just as a reference for you guys. But I know most of these classes, and if you have a question, please ask me. So I need to create a navigation bar. So I need a nav component that will have some classes, class name, and nav bar. And now you have to indicate this nav bar will collapse to have a responsive screen on which type of screen. So I want to expand it on large screen. Nav bar to be expand on large screen. Oh, I don't know what's expand on large screen. Definitely you can change that to small screen, medium screens, whatever, but I'm going to keep it to large screens. And these are Bootstrap classes. I want to fix it to the top, so I can do fixed top class. And I want it to be dark colored. I want the text to be light, I'm sorry. So I'm going to say nav bar. The nav bar will be dark. When you have this class, it will make sure that the text will be light. This is not actually the color of the navigation bar. This is indication what the text will be, okay? And I'm gonna use a style to style it really quick here in line to a background color. Again, you can mess around with the colors. You style it the way that you want it. I like the application to be in a dark color, which is 070707. And this is actually the Netflix color. So, okay, so now I have the basic navigation bar. And if you go now, you should see it like this, okay? And since it's fixed to the top, you see all the text is behind, because when you have a component that's fixed, it's taken out of the context of the page and all the other components shifted up. So technically this navigation bar on top of the pages, but we're gonna fix that later. But right now this navigation bar have nothing, and this is the color of our navigation bar. So next, I want this navigation bar to be fluid. The fluid, that means taking the whole size of the navigation bar. So I'm gonna create a div with a class name container, and you have 2 class names, either container or container fluid. Container fluid, it will take the all size just container will put it in the middle and give you some margin on the side. I want to take the full width of it, so container fluid, and close my div. I'm going to use the link for my logo here. So when the user click on the logo, it takes him to the home page. So I can't, for React Router, you can't use the A tag. So you have to use the link which is the alternative. So I'm going to use the link, which is going to be imported from the React router DOM. And I'm going to call it React Movie App. I'm going to put it here as an H4. Okay. And also, I need to give it some classes. Class name. It's going to be the navbar brand. And again, you can reference here our Bootstrap. It have navbar brand, which is the brand here. But as you can see here, they're using the A tag. Since we're using React, we can't use the A tag. Navbar brand. And this link take also a prop, which is 2, which is the pass when the user clicking this link, where it should go to the home page. I want the text to be, no, I can specify the text here, class name, text danger, because I want the color to be red. Let's save it. Take a look at it. Here we go. React Movie App. When you click here, it takes you to the home page. Okay, so that's the first step. Okay, so we have the logo here. Actually, that's a good time to take our first 10-minute break. Before we go to break, any questions, guys? Questions? Anybody confused? Okay. So let's take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to continue in the navigation bar. So the whole goal, I will try to finish as many as we can today, like probably the login process, login page, and the authentication by today. And tomorrow we can continue with the actual movie interaction with the API. So hopefully we'll do that. If we have time at the end, of course, definitely we can add more. But I'll try to break it down to 2 major things, which is one is going to be the authentication, which is the login page, the register page, dealing with Firebase, and tomorrow dealing with the API, which is actually fetching the movies. But we'll see how far we can finish today. Any questions before we go to break, guys? Okay, guys, so we're going to continue with our application. As we mentioned, it's very, very important to take this application. It's big app, and it's going to definitely help you in your interviews, and definitely you want to refer to this app in your resume in order to in the interview process, so they can ask a question about the application, and since you build it, you know how it works, and you're going to be ready for any kind of question in that application. Before the break, we start with the navigation bar, and we finish actually the structure of the application by creating all the components that we're going to need and creating the router and the context for the user state. So that's what we did so far. We're going to continue with building the navigation bar. Here's our navigation bar status right now. We just created the brand of the navigation bar. After the brand, we want to put all the content to the other side here. So I need to wrap them with a div and set it all the way to that side. So I can wrap a div here, use the div. And this div going to have a class of display flex, because I want to have flex align items, line items center, because I want it to be all on the same center. And let's give it a try. I'm just going to add an H1 here to see how it's going to look like. Now you have container fluid, and you have two items here. One is going to be on the left side, and the other here going to be on the right side. Like just to log in and see how that going to look like. And you see here the login on the other side, because this is how the navigation working, or the nav bar working with Bootstrap. When I did the container fluid, now it's going to separate the first item, which is the brand, all the way on the left, and anything in that flex container going to be on the right. Okay, now I don't want definitely the H1 here. However, I need to check if the user is logged in or not, because if he's logged in, he's going to see a different navigation bar from the user who's not logged in. So how can I know if the user is logged in or not? From the state that I have in the app, which is the current user. If the current user have a value, that's mean there's a logged in user, right? So now the question I want from the context, tap in this data, because now I put this data, which is in the app, I put it on the context. And you can think about the context like the cloud, the cloud hovering over your application. Now from that context, I want to tap into the data that's included in the context in my navigation bar to check if there is a user who's logged in or not. And that's very, very easy because we have a hook for that, which is called use context. Use context. And use context is coming from the React library. And it gives you access to the context data. All it's going to take only one thing, this hook, is the context itself, which my context is called auth context. So I need to import it. And once I click here, it's going to be imported. So now I'm going to use the hook use context on the auth context to tap in the data that I already have it in the provider, which is the provider have the data, which is called current user. So I will be able to access this current user data here, and I can definitely, I need to destruct it. And the reason I need to destruct it, because my context, as a matter of fact, has an object. This is an object. So from that object, which is the context have an object, I will pull out the current user. So I need to destruct the current user. Now I have access to this state, even though this state is in the app component. But since the app component put it in the context, now I have access to it here using the use context hook. Now I want to check if the user is logged in. I want to show him something. So I need to check like this. So I'm going to put some JSX code here if he's logged in. If he's not logged in, I'm going to show him something else. So now I'm going to put some codes here. The code that I'm going to put here, JSX code, if he's logged in, if this is true, if I have a value for the current user. Otherwise, if I don't have a value, the other code will be executed. It's conditional render. Let's start with the code here that if he's not logged in. If he's not logged in, I want to show two buttons, one for login and one for sign up. That's all I need to do here. Okay, so I want to show a button. This button, let's call it login. Going to have another button or register, right? Two buttons. Okay, and now this is type button. I'm going to give it some classes, Bootstrap classes that I want it to be margin space by 2. And it's a PTN. It's a button to be styled as a button. btn outline to have this outline button. And if you confused what is this, if you go to buttons here, it will give you all the classes, ptn primary, and now we're going to use this outlines buttons. So we have to use ptn outline primary, and whatever color you need. So we're going to use ptn outline, and the color we're going to use is the light color. Okay. And the last thing, or you know what, let's do it later. The type here is button, class name, margin space 2, ptn, and all of this are just bootstrap classes just to style the button. Of course, the alternative is that you style the button yourself. Okay, so this is for classes. This is the two buttons we want to show if the user is not logged in. What happened if he's logged in? If he's logged in, I want to show a form. So form that having a search. So you see here, he's not logged in. If he register and register with Google, this is the two buttons we want to show if he's not logged in. But if he's logged in, I want to give him the opportunity to be able to search for a movie. So I want to show him this search, and also want to show his name. That is going to be a property from the current user. And finally, give him the option to log out. So three things I want to put here. The first one here, it's easy. I can go to Bootstrap. And you have the option here. If you go to navigation bar, nav bar, and you don't know how to start it, you have this search. That's what I'm using here, which is coming from this form. So you can copy this form. A form is simply having an input and a button. Very, very simple form. So I can paste this form here. And of course, I need a wrapper because it's going to have a form and the name of the person and so on. So this form having an input, which is a type search, placeholder search, and you can remove the area label that's for screen readers. And we have a button, and now it's complaining because React is actually JSS code, so it's XML. It require the input field to be closed, so you actually have to close the input. Okay. Now I have the search. Beside the search, I want to have an H4. So this is the search, which is this part here. I want to have this H4 with the current user name, the current user who just logged in, his name. I want to display it here. So I'm going to display it in this H4. And this H4, I'm going to give it some class names. Text, capitalize. I want to capitalize it. So the first letter will be capital, and the last name will be capital as well. I want to display it inline, block. And the text, I want it to be orange. So I'm going to give it the color of warning. And I'm going to give some spacing margin X from the left and the right to size 2. And here, I will access the current user, and the current user, as Firebase we're going to explain that in the Firebase, but it's an object. Current user is an object, and it's have a very important property, which is called display name. So current user, and I want to check if it's have this property. So I put a question mark, display name. Okay. So if there's display name, that's where I'm going to put it here, which is actually the name that I have here, which is my name. Okay. So that's for the name. finally, I'm going to have a button, another button for logging out. So I'm going to copy one of these buttons and I'm going to change its caption to log out. You can call it sign out or wherever you want. Okay, save. And now we have only the option to see that the user, because now we don't have logged in user. So you see now login and register. Well, you can play around. Of course, I'm the developer. I can put some value here. Can put true or true to see how that's going to look like. If you put true, try to cheat. You see now, you see the search bar. You don't see the name because I don't have any property in this object called display name. But you can do it also in a different way. You can debug your app. Now it's false, don't have any value. If you go uninspected, and if you go to oh, it's right here. Here, components, and now these are the components, which is the router, the browser router, and so on. And in my nav bar here, it's coming from the context. You see the current user, which is undefined, and I can edit this, and I can actually context provider here. And I can change it to true. Look now what's going to happen here. You see now the navigation bar changed. So you can use this tool in order to debug your application and play around with it instead of actually changing the code. All right, so now I have a nice navigation bar that it will change how it looks dynamically based if there is a current user who logged in or not. Okay. But one thing that these buttons are currently not working. I want when the user click here, navigate him to the login page. When the user click here, I want to navigate him to the register page. Here, I want to log him out. And also for the search, definitely we're going to do work in the search navigation a little bit later. But for now, I need the use navigate from the React Router DOM, because use navigate will help me when the user, I can add a listener here on click. When the user click here, then when he click, I can reroute him using the use navigate. So programmatically, I can navigate the user with this hook. So not only link, I will use navigate from the React Router DOM and use it here, constant navigate equal use navigate. Now I have this navigate function that I can use it. And now when the user login, I can do on click. And now I can navigate the user to the login page. And you can put it in a different line like this. So when the user clicked the button, I want to take him to the login page. Also, for the register, I want to do the same. When the user clicks in the register button, I want to take him to the register screen or the register page. Okay, save. Let's try. First, I need, let me refresh because I have the status updated. Login. Notice what's going to happen. I'm in the login page. Register. I'm going to register page. Good. So now the two buttons are working. Okay, what else we need to do here? We need the search because the user gonna type in this. But let's do it once we finish the authentication and you will be able to log in. But so far, any questions, guys? Okay. We're going to get back to the navigation bar after we do the login page and register page, of course. Okay. Before we move forward, I want to go to the index.css. Make sure that I clean everything, margin 0, padding 0, box sizing, border box. And also I want to create a class that to be accessible for all the components. And this class, reason I want to add it, any page that I will start render is going to be behind this navigation bar because this navigation bar, it's fixed in the top. So anything I'm going to print is going to be this navigation bar on top of it. So any page, I want to push its content, its margin down. So I'm going to create a custom class here. I'm going to call it page for all my pages. And simply, it's just going to give some margin top to get away from this navigation bar, 60 pixels, for example. Okay. So I can use this class with any of the pages. Since I'm choosing that the this navigation bar, because as you can see, this navigation bar here, it's fixed at the top. Even when I scroll, it's fixed. It's fixed means there's a content behind it. It's on top of all the contents. So I'm pushing all the contents here down 60 pixels underneath this navigation bar. Okay, this is what is this class for. Now let's go to the login page. As I said, login page here. Our login page, login out, should look like, I mean, again, I did some changes. Definitely you can do it similar to the project here. Both are pretty much, it just, the functionality is the same. It's just the styling is a little bit different. Okay. So what I did, I can go get an image, and this image is going to be the background for all the login and the register. I'm going to go to Unsplash and search for movie login. And login. You'll have multiple images. But let me drag and drop the image that I have. So I'm going to have here, you can use any images, technically, assets. And I'm going to put it here. And this is the image that I'm going to use, which is called login. It's a big image. Of course, you can edit the image, but I will do that with the CSS. All right, in my login page here, I'm going to have a form. So as you can see in our application, there is a form, and there is a background of an image. So I'm going to have this div, and I want to use CSS modules for this, because whatever classes I want to use, I want it to be only specific for the login page. Even I use the same name into any other component, it's not going to affect, it's not going to cause any naming clashes. So if you remember when I told you that CSS modules is simply the name of the file, module.css. So I'm going to be using CSS modules. I'm going to create a couple of CSS here, custom CSS, login. So this is my first class name. I want to give it a background image, and this is going to be the background, which is going to be the URL, which I'm going to go up 2 level, assets, and the login page. Okay, now I can go to my login page here and do class name. Since you're using the models, you need to import it here. So import as an object. So you this object should have a name, and usually called classes from model.css. So now this class is an object that have a property that called login. To use it here, you put it as an expression, classes dot login, and that's how you use CSS models. Now the class called login here, so I'm going to import the CSS as an object, and I access the login property. All right, let me add here an h1 to see how it looks like. And hello, login page. And you shouldn't see anything, just like, you shouldn't see anything. The reason for that, because I have the hello behind the navigation bar. And that's the reason I created the page class. So I need to add the page class here. Very simple. Use a backtext. Oops, using backtext here. Inside. So I'm going to use the login plus the class called page that will push the content down. Here we go. And I have my page and the image here, but the image is not taking everything here. To fix that, I can fix it in the CSS. Very simple. So now in the CSS, I want to set the height. And the height, you remember, I want it to be 100 of view height, but I already push it 60 pixels. So I can use a very nice tool called calculate, which is I want to subtract from the 100% of the view height, 60% or 60 pixels, I'm sorry, that I used for the margin. So this is going to be the height. If you take a look right now, here's the image. Okay, and you have the login page. Nice. Let's put it side by side. What else I want to do? I want the background size to be cover. Now it's cover. I want to push it somehow, play with the position. So background position for the x-axis, I want to take 100%. For the y-axis, 80%. Oh, it's actually the x-axis. You see it get pushed that 80% that way. So it's actually, you see the hand. So if I didn't do this, the position, technically I move the page up or the image up to the 80%. Okay. So I can see the person hand. Of course, it's different from that view. So you can play with the position. Beside the position, I want to display flex because the form is going to be in the middle of the screen. So flex, justify content, which is going to be the form, center, align items, center, and it's going to be position relative, just in case if I want to align anything to it. All right, now the next trick I want to show you, this image a little bit light. How can I make it darker or add an overlay to this image? Any suggestions? I'm going to show you a nice trick.
Opacity.
Opacity will affect everything, including the form itself. I don't want to use opacity. Since we're using background image, a nice trick, you can use linear gradient with an RGBA. So I can do linear gradient, and you separate them by comma, then the URL. So the linear gradient is going to be in front of your image. And now you can control the linear gradient with an RGBA of 0, 0, 0, which is a black shade, let's say 2, or let's put a dark one first so you can see. And we're going to copy the same value. So technically, we're adding this RGBA color in front of the page. And take a look right now. Now it's getting darker, right? So we can control how dark we want it, which is I'm going to put 2. And I'm going to put 2 here. Okay, that's a little bit dark, or 3. See, it's getting darker from the top. 3. Okay, like that. Nice trick, you can use it, that you can add an overlay in front of your image here. All right, that's for the login. Now I want to add the form itself. So I'm going to create here login form, a class for the login form, which I'm going to give it some padding, 2 rem. See the padding here. So the padding of the content, 2 rem. Also, I want to do background color or background, linear gradient, because you see this background here is transparent. Gonna copy my RGBA values here because I want the background to be transparent. Oh, it's a value of 85, so it's dark. Border radius. See the border radius here. In that case, I want a 10 pixels. The width of the form should be 450 pixels. You can change the width definitely. And finally, you see how it have nice animation. You can create this animation. I'm gonna call it zoom in animation. So to create this animation, very simple. You gotta use the key frames. The identifier here, you can call it zoom in. You can call it anything you want, zoom in. At 0%, I want to transform. I want to scale it with 0. So it's going to be very tiny at 0%. At 100%, I want to transform to scale it at 1, which is the actual size. So it's going to appear that coming from back to, it's going to be zoom in because 0% is 0. It's have no scale, and it's going to keep increasing to its actual width, which is 450 pixel. So this is the animation that I'm using here. And you can play it around with different animation. You can make it drop it down from the top, any kind of animation that you want to use. All right. So here I'm just creating the animation. In order to use it, you have to use the animation where you define the name of the animation that you defined, which is zoom in, which is this name, this identifier. Actually, you put first the time in half a second. It will take half a second to create this zoom in, ease in. Okay, that's it. Duration, the name of the animation, and the type, ease in, ease out. And if you don't know them, you can press here, and it will get all the options here. But you can type in ease in, ease out, in and out, and so far. I'm just going to do ease in, out. Okay, so that's for my login form. I want to style the H1 here. I can target the H1 in the login form by the login form H1. And simply, I'm going to do the color white. And the text, center it by text align center. I want to make all the inputs you see here are also transparent. So the input fields that inside my login form, and also when they are focused like this, so I can target the input. when they are focused, when these are try to type in, their background color should be transparent and the color of the text to be white. Okay, and I can, yep. All right, so now let's build the form. Because right now we have only the background. To build in the form, it's very, very simple. So all I need to do, go here. I can remove the H1 right now. I don't need it. And I want a div to define my form, class name. And remember, I defined the login form, which is now part of this object, classes.login form. Once you save it, you see now here's the form, but it have nothing, and you see it was zoomed in. I'm going to add an H1, which is called login. Save. Here's the login, taking shape. I'm going to add a form. This form, I'm going to have the first input, which is I'm going to give it a div. I'm going to give it a class name, margin bottom 3. So it's going to have a margin bottom of 3, size 3. And it's going to have a label. Simply saying email. And I'm going to give it a couple of classes. Class name, which is form label. Again, if you go here and Bootstrap and you go to forms, form control, you will have a form, and it's going to see all these classes that I'm using: form label, form control, all of this classes. Even I'm using here margin bottom 3, similar to this example. So Bootstrap should be a reference when, if you don't have to memorize them, okay? But with time, you will eventually memorize them when you use them. Again, you don't have to memorize everything. You just go and make the documentation as your reference, as we're going to do with the Firebase itself. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go to the Firebase documentation, see their codes, and build my codes based in their codes. Okay, so the classes here, the form label, I want the text to be colored white, so text light. I want also here, they have the for. We can't use for in JSX. We can have to use HTML4. And we put the ID name. And the ID name, I'm going to put an email. Okay. Let's now make it big. So I'm going to have the input field, which is type email. I'm going to give it a class name. And the class name is very important here, is form control. And the ID is email. And this ID is matching the HTML form here. Let's save that. Go take a look, see if everything is working fine. Here we go. I have the email, and I can type in the email. Perfect. So it's taking shape here. I can copy this div down, and now I'm going to work on the password. So I'm going to be for the password. Password. And the type will be password. And if you don't want Google to autofill, you can use autocomplete to be off. And also I'm going to add a placeholder. Why not? Enter your email. Can't type. And also placeholder here. Enter your password. Okay, let's save that and see how it looks like. Enter your email and enter your password. Nice. All right, now let's work. Here, I want to add the forget your password. So I'm going to have a class or a div. And this div, I'm going to give it some class names, text center. And I'm going to tell the user forget password. Give him a question mark so he can click on it and activate the forget password functionality. I just want to make it a pointer. I'm going to do it inline styling here. So the cursor pointer. And I want it to be color orange. So text warning. Margin top 3. I'm going to give it some margin to the top. Save that. And I have this forget password where the user can click on it. Currently, it's not doing anything. But later, we're going to do the functionality for that. Finally, I want to have a button. And this button, I want to center it, or actually not center it. Take a look here. I want this button to span across the whole form. And in order to do that, you have to wrap your button with a div with a class name of dgrid. And I didn't know that because Bootstrap 4, you have to use a BTN block, but you can, if you take a look here, the components, buttons, they give you all the examples of buttons, and you will see this long button. You see that you have to use the dgrid and wrap your buttons in order to see them spanning like this. So I'm using the dgrid, put my button here. And make sure it's a type button, because this button is inside a form. So if you didn't specify the type as a button, it automatically will be submit button. Again, we want to handle everything here with event listeners like onClick. So this is going to be the login button. And I'm going to give it some class names. Class name here, BTN primary. And form control margin top 3. Save that. Take a look. Have my button here. Perfect. I'm going to duplicate this button. And the second button here is not going to be for login. It's going to be for continue with Google. So you can log in with the Google account. With Google. Perfect. I have the 2 buttons now. Also, I want to give the option that he can, if he have an account, I can switch him to the get to register page. So after my form here, actually, this shouldn't be part of the form. So this should be after the form. It doesn't matter, actually, semantically. It should be not part of the form because he's going to log in with Google. You don't need the inputs. But then I'm going to add a paragraph here. And this paragraph, tell him doesn't have an account because he's trying to log in. So I can tell him doesn't have an account. So I'm asking him, I'm going to give it some styling, class name, text center, text light, margin bottom 3. If he doesn't have an account, I'm going to add a span here. And in this span, I will tell him sign up. And this sign up should take him to the register page. That's going to be a different color, which is class name, text warning. And also I'm going to give it the style to make it a pointer. So when he hover over it, he knows that he can click it. So the style cursor pointer. If you take a look, if you save, take a look. There you go. Don't have an account. He can sign up or he can click forget password. So this is the first form that we have here. Any questions so far in the markup for this form or the styling or anything confusing? We didn't do any logic so far. We're just building the pages that we're going to work with. Anyone confused? Okay, so to finish this up, keep in mind that we need the navigation because we need to navigate the user to the sign up page. So I can import, use navigate or from, forget it's navigator. So I can always select the library and then start typing, use navigator. You can check, we use it in the, let's use navigate. Yeah, use navigate. And also I have a form here. Keep in mind, this is a form. So if you remember, we're using React forms, each input must have its own state, right? You have to hold all these inputs in a state. So I'm going to use state. Use state. And now, since I have use state, I'm going to store constant navigate is equal use navigate, and also make the states for the email set email, call use state. I'm going to copy. I have one more, which is password. I'm going to set password. Perfect. All right, so I have my states. I have to link it to my inputs. And to link it, it's very simple. Two things to do two-way. First, you set the value to the state, which is email. Second, to on change, when the user start typing, what do you want to do? On change, we want to have access to the event and set email to the e.target.value. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go here in the input. For the password as well, I need to have on change listener to connect this input field with my state. Every time the user type in something, I hold whatever he type in my state and set its value to the password. And of course, this is not set email. This is set password. And finally, here in this paragraph, when I tell the user, if you don't have an account, you click in a sign up, I want to add on-click listener. And using this on-click listener, I want to navigate the user. Navigate to the register page. Okay. So if I get back here, click here, sign up, it takes me to the register page, login page, and you see we have the zoom animation coming in. Of course, we're going to add the functionality. Now these spines done doing anything. Any questions? Because technically the register page is going to be the duplicate of that. Going to do the same thing for the register. We're going to be copying and pasting this component for the register page, except it's going to be the email and your name. So we're going to collect the name of the user as well. Any question before we go to break? Okay, guys, everybody's here. Just give me thumbs up if you came back from the break.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let me start sharing my screen, and we're going to work on the register page, which should happen quickly. So this is our login page. Now, when you click in the register, it's empty. It's not showing anything. So in the register page, I'm going to copy the login CSS because this is only fixed for the login page. Copy it, paste it here. I'm going to rename it. Register module.css. And all I need to do, instead of login, call it register. Same styles I'm going to use. Register form, register you can actually do it Control D form. Okay, and I still have the animation and everything in the register here. Of course, don't forget save. I'm going to open it side by side with the login page because it's going to be pretty much the same thing. I'm going to copy this in 3 lines. And the class is going to be coming from the register models. Register model. And here, same thing. Navigate. Use states, one for the email and one for the password. And I'm going to add a new one for the name of the person so he can register. So the name, set name, call use state. Copy all this here. Same form, is technically same HTML for my form. The only classes I need to change, paste it here. Save it, and I don't need the login form anymore. Close, close, close. This class that I'm importing, it's called register, not login. Register. And it's called register form. And instead of login, register. And the first input is not going to be the email anymore. I'm just going to copy this div. It's going to be the name, because I want the user to provide his name. Paste it. So HTML4, the name, and the ID. It's going to be name. And of course, the type is text. And I don't need the autocomplete off. It's a name. Google not going to autocomplete it for you. And the placeholder here, please enter your name. The value will be from the name state, not from the email state. And when the user start typing, I want to update the name state. So I'm going to use set name. Save that. And also one thing, instead of login, it should be sign up. And instead of don't have an account, he's already in the register page. Has an account. And I want to take him to the login page, which is I'm going to navigate him to the login page. Save that. Has an account, question mark. So here's the register page. Of course, I don't need a forget password. He's creating an account. So I can remove the forget password here. He's actually creating an account. He shouldn't have a password to remember it. So he enter his name, email, password, then he click a sign up, or he can create an account with Google, and he can also, if he have an account and he don't want to register, click here. And okay, it's actually taking me to the login page, not the home page /login. So login, sign up, login page, sign up page. And as you can see here, take a look at the URL. It's keep changing between register and login with this nice animation. All right, now we're going to start working on the functionality of actually signing up the user and register a user and authentication. You need a backend for authentication. And since right now we don't have, we can't write our backend on our own since we don't have experience with a backend language like Python or Node.js. We're going to use Firebase, and Firebase is a backend as a service. So it provides you with all backend services out of the box for you. So the Firebase team created functions and it have the backend for you. All you need to do is just out of the box, use the function and interact with Firebase. Think about Firebase is a backend for you as a front-end developer. So you can create the front-end application and use Firebase as a backend where it provides you with multiple services. One of them is the authentication. Authentication is a server-side feature, not a front end. It will take care of encrypting your passwords, make sure it's stored in a database, all these passwords, and it will make sure that when you enter the username or the email in that case and the password, they actually exist in the database, and it will do all that authentication functionality for you. Again, do you need the Firebase? No. If you're good in the backend, definitely you can write your own authentication functionality. But we're going to start. Go to Firebase. And you should have an access to the Firebase if you have a Google account. Go to console. And here I have multiple projects. I'm going to create a new project. and you put the project name here. I can do any name and make sure it's unique name. React movie app. I'm going to put it was 1B because that exists. Of course, you can be creative with the name here, or I can do it movie app RCT, short for React or React. This is taken already, as you can see the number. So I'll put RCT. Click continue. I don't want to enable the Google Analytics. Create the project. And once you create a project, there's multiple services. You can use Firebase database. You can use Firebase hosting. You can use Firebase authentication, like we're going to use it. There's many services. You can use Firebase functions. There's many services that Firebase provide you. Continue. It will take you to the project here. You click in the build, and all of this are the services that Firebase provide you. We used the hosting before. You have database, two types of databases. You have an extension, you have machine learning, remote configuring, and so many services, Firebase, which is backend services. It's called BASS, or backend as a service. Okay. I'll go to authentication. Get started. And I want the user to be able to authenticate with an email and password. Enable email and password, yes. Email link, sign in. Okay, why not? Save. So now the user can use an email and password to log into this authentication. I also want to add a provider, so he can log in with Google or Facebook, or all of these are providers. Okay, so I'm going to select Google. Enable. This is your project ID. It's fine. I'm going to use my email here. Optional, save. So now I have the user can enter his email and password, or he can log in with Google account. One last thing that you need from here, you already configure your authentication. You go to this wheel here, and you go to project settings. And in this project settings, you're going to get your app. You click on the web page. I don't want Android or iOS. Click here. You create an application. You can put it any name, my app. Give it a nickname. If you want to host the application, but for now, I'm not going to be hosting it. Later, I'm going to add the hosting. Here, what you need, this is the very first step. You should have the Firebase installed. So I tell you to install Firebase. And from the Firebase app, you need a function called initialize app. And this initializing app, you have some configuration, which is the API key, the auth domain, project ID, and so many configuration that you're going to need it for your app to connect your code with the backend. And I'm going to copy everything here. Copy it to the clipboard. Go to my application. I'm going to create a file. I'm going to call it Firebase.js. Paste them here. Okay. So as you can see, the first step, we getting a function called initialize app to initialize your application to connect it with the backend from Firebase/app. Second step here, we have some configuration, and it's just an object, as you can see, that have an API key and all the information about your application. You pass this configuration to the function that you get it, and you get a reference to your application. Just easy like this. And as you can see, I didn't do anything. I just copied and pasted here. Okay, now the next step, if you go to the GitHub account, they have the link of how you can use the Firebase authentication. So if you go to React, projects, and the movie app, if you go all the way down, it tells you use the Firebase, this web page, and create an authentication. So it have a documentation tell you how you can use the Firebase authentication. So I'm going to copy this. Let's say I don't know anything about the Firebase authentication. Paste it here, and it will walk you step by step. It's a documentation here. Okay, it tells you that you can use pull out a function, get auth, and that's if you that's for initialization. Sign up a new user. That's what I want. I want to sign up a new user to register a user, right? So here, there's two functions that I need. Get auth, create user with email and password. These functions are created by the Firebase team, and it's going to be imported from Firebase auth. So I'm going to copy this line, paste it here. Now, constant auth, get auth, and create user with email and password. You take three things: the auth reference, because when you use get auth here, give you back a reference to your authentication application, and you need that reference as the first argument, then an email and password. Okay, and you can see that this function is a synchronous function that's using Zen here, that you'll get back the user credentials. So I will go to my Firebase here, and after initialize, constant auth, my authentication, get auth executed with my app, because I created an app reference. I passed this application because I want to get an authentication, and this is my reference to my authentication. Now, I can create any functions that I'm going to use, like register user. So constant register user equal, and it's a function like this. And this function, I'm going to put the functionality to register a user. But this function, I'm going to need it in the register page, so I can export it. Okay, so this function get exported. And this function should receive an email, password, and display name, or the username technically, or the name he put in the input field. Remember, the registration required 3 input fields: email, password, and name. So these are the 3 inputs for this function. So this function required email, password, and display name. And as you can see, create user with email and password is an asynchronous. So I can use async here. And instead of using then and catch, I can use try and catch error. Now I'm going to use the create user with email and password. And as in the documentation here, the first thing to take is the auth object, which we have here, auth. Then it takes the email and password. And we have to await for it. Next, we want to update the user profile. It's not in the documentation, but there is another function that you can get from Firebase, which is called update profile. It's like you can update the user profile with an image, display name, anything you want. Okay, so I want to update his profile with the name that you sent here. So it's also a synchronous operation. So await update profile, and update profile take two things: the auth object, which is have access to the current user. See, if I put dot, it gives me all the methods and properties that we have inside this object. So it have the current user. So that's the user that I want to set his profile. And I want to set his profile to have a display name. So you pass an object here where his display name will be the display name that we pass to the function. Okay. And let's console.log auth.current user to see which the current user. Okay, if we get an error, I want to return the error dot message. Okay, and the messages, all the error messages, it will have a Firebase text with it. I don't want to show that all this error messages coming from the Firebase, so I can remove the Firebase text that inside the error messages. Firebase. I'm going to replace it with nothing technically. So I'm removing any error message. It's going to be like Firebase user not found. I want to remove the Firebase part of it and return it back. Okay, so this is how you can register a user. So this function, definitely I want it in the registration page. So I can go to my pages, register, and I can import this function here, which is called register user. From Firebase. And now to register a user, it's when the user click on the sign up here. So when he click in this sign up button, I want to do on click. And I'm going to create a function that's called submit handler. I want to execute it. So I need to create this function. I'm going to go up here. Constant submit handler is a function. And in this function, in the submit handler, I can check if there is no name. So I'm doing some validation. So if the user trying to go to my page here or trying to register, but he didn't provide any of this and he clicks sign up, that will fail. I want to do some validation that he put any name, email, and password. So if there is no name or there is no email or no password, I can create another state to hold errors or error messages. So I'm going to call it error, set error, use state, which is initially there is no errors. But if there is no name field or there is no email or there is no password, I want to set this error and give him an error message, invalid entry. Something like that, okay? So this error state will have this text. And definitely I want to return. I don't want to continue logging the user in. Okay, so where this error I can see it. I can see the error. I can put it anywhere in my form. I can put it right after the H1. So if I do have an error, I can add a paragraph. And this paragraph, I'm going to give it a class name where the text I want it to be read. So it's danger. And text center and margin 3. And I want to show the error here. Okay, so now I have a state that will hold the error. If the user didn't provide the name or email or the password, give him this error message once I set my state, it's going to re-render, and this error will take an effect. So if I try to click sign up, you see now invalid entry. So if I put the name, the email, but not the password, still give me invalid entry. So you have to enter all of them in order to sign up, which is small validation. Now, if everything is okay and the user didn't return, so this is going to be sign the user in. How I'm going to sign him in? Very simple. I'm going to use the register user function here. So constant message equal, and keep in mind, if there is a Firebase error, I will get a message back. So if you remember here, if everything is okay, I'm not going to have a message. However, if I have an error, I'm going to return an error message. So the only case you get a message if there is an error. So this message will have nothing if everything is okay, but if there is an error, it will be stored in this message. And I'm going to await. So I'm going to do a sync here, and I'm going to execute this function, which is called register user, which is take three things: email, password, and the display name. The email is in my state email. Password is right here. And the name is the display name. Okay. So if there is a message, that means I have an error. So I'm going to set my error with this message. Okay. And I want to get the user back to the same page, the registration page. So I want to show him the error. So I want to navigate to /register and return. So this is in case the user didn't intentionally fill in one of the form fields. Here, if I get an error from Firebase, so these two are error handling. Finally, if I have no error, I'm going to set the error to null and navigate the user to the login page. So he successfully registered, and now he can go to the login page to put his new credentials and login. Okay, so this is my handler here. Again, check the user inputs. If one of them is empty, show him an error. Try to connect with the Firebase to register the user. If Firebase is having an error that it's not a correct email or email format, Firebase will give me an error back. I'll show it to the user. If everything is okay, I'll clear my error state, remove the error, and then navigate the user to the login page. So let's try, give it a try. So let's refresh. Alfred Resk. Put my Gmail, and let's put the password. Let's put a wrong email first, because if you put a wrong email, Firebase will send you back an error message. So if you try to sign up, this is the error message coming from the Firebase. Error auth invalid email. So I tell the user that you have invalid email. I'm going to put my email address and sign up. And notice that I get to the login page. That means everything is okay. And you can go to your Firebase now. Go to console. You will notice in the authentication that you now have a new user registered in your system, which is with that email. Okay. Any questions?
No, sir.
All right. Again, let me remove that part so you can see. This is the error message the Firebase will send you. So if I go here, if I try to register or any junk, sign up, you see that Firebase errors usually have a prefix of Firebase. And that's the reason I did the replace and I remove it from any error message that I receive from the Firebase. So that's why I put, any message that coming from the Firebase, I'm gonna replace the text Firebase with nothing, just to remove the text. Okay, so this is the first function to register a user. So how can I log in a user? Let's take a look at the documentation. Signing in an existing user. To signing in an existing user, you need a function called sign in with an email and password. So I'm going to copy also this function. You get it from the Firebase auth. I'm going to copy this function and paste it here because I want to pull it out on the Firebase auth. Now I have access to this function. I'm going to create my own function here, constant, and you can call it whatever you want. You can call it login. You can call it anything. Login a user. I'm going to call it login. Simple. It's going to be async. And to log in a user, I just need his email and password. Okay. Since I'm using an async and await, I'm going to use a try and catch. Catch error. And I'm going to use the same thing. If I receive an error from Firebase, I want to return the error message. Okay, now I just get the sign in with the email and password. To see how it works, you take a look here. I take the auth as the first argument, the email and password, and it will return to you the user credential. Okay. So here, await, or you can store the user credential equal await. Sign in with an email and password. First one, auth object. Second is the email and password. And you can console log user credential. Now I have this login function that will log in the user with Firebase with the help of sign in with email and password function. Now I have to use it in the login page. Same thing we did with the auth, with the register. Notice here that I didn't check if the user have, I didn't do any validation for the form inputs. So I can do that, adding my error state, set error, use state. Initially, it's null. And I'm going to have submit handler, which is an async function. Okay, now, first I want to check if the user fill in the email and password. So if there is no email or there is no password, in that case, I want to set error to invalid entry. This is the error message that I want the user to see. Okay, now I have this error state that I'm putting text in it. I want to show it here after the login. So if I have an error, I'm going to show the paragraph where it have class name, text is red, text danger, and text align or text center and M3. And I'm going to show the text of the error if there is an error. Okay. And of course, I want to return. I don't want to continue if there is an error. The next step, I want to log in the user using the login function that I just created. So I need to import the login function from the Firebase. Okay. And if I have an error from the Firebase, it will return as a message, constant message equal await, will log in, pass the email, and pass the password. And if I have a message, that means I have an error, and technically set error to the message and send it back to the login page so he can see the error message. So navigate to the login. And definitely, I don't want to continue with the code, so I can return the user. So if there is any error, you always return. If everything is okay and you want to log in the user, you want to clear the errors. There is no errors at this point. So set error to null. And you want to navigate him now to the sign-in page, the login page. He just signed in. Save. Okay. So this is the logic. Simple validation for the input field. Connect with the Firebase. If the Firebase have an error, I want to show the error to the user. If there is no error, I will clear my error state and navigate the user to the home page. And that's the logic here. So if I'm in the login, this is my login. Try to log in. Something wrong. It's not showing my error. There is no email and password. Oh, because I created the function and I should link it here. I should have an on-click submit handler. So now if I click invalid entry, remember I have an account here. It was my email and password. So I'm gonna put my email, but I'm gonna put any dummy thing just to get the Firebase error authentication invalid email. So let me put a correct email, but with the wrong password. Put a wrong password. Invalid error authentication with the wrong password. Now, all these error messages we get it from the Firebase. Let me put the correct password. And it now directed me to the home page. Okay. Perfect. So we did the registration and we did the login, and all of that with the help of documentation from here, signing an existing user. I'm just creating a function to wrap this functionality. You have something called state observer. Notice now, if I log in successfully, like let me put notice that my navigation bar didn't change, even though I logged in. So I should always use the Firebase observer, so it will tell me if there is a user just currently signed in or signed out. It will always observe the user logged in or logged out. It's an observing function, and you can see here. For each of your apps pages that need information about signing in a user, attach an observer to the global authentication object. So it tells you, is the user just signed in or just signed out? Once he signed out, this observer will notify you. Once the user signed in, it will notify you. So you need this function here that will update you, keep you up to date if the user just signed in or he's just signed out. Okay, so it's called on auth state change. So it's an observer to the auth state if it gets changed. It's a function. So I need to import it from the Firebase library on auth change. And I'm going to create my Firebase observer function. that will observe a user. Export constant user observer. User observer will take only one function as an input, because once the user logged in or once he logged out, what I need to do, I have the context here, which is an app. I have the current user. I want to set it to false. That's mean when the user out. If the user just signed in, I want to put the value of the user here. So in order to change the value of the current user, you need this function, because this function controls this state. So this is the function that I need to pass to my observer here. If he logged out, clear the current user. If he just logged in, fill the current user with the user information. So I want to set current user function here. Right. So as you can see, it take auth object, and the second input is a function where you put your logic. If there is a user, else the user is signed out. So if there is a user, that's mean he's signed in. If else, he's signed out. So I will do that. So on auth changed, I will take the auth object, and it will take a function that will give me access to the user state. If there is a user, that means he just signed in. Else, that's mean he signed out. If he signed out, I want to set the current user to false or null or anything that he's just signed out. However, if he signed in, I want to set the current user with that user information that he just signed in. Right? And since it's one line, I can remove it, all these curly brackets, and make it look nice. Very simple function. Now the question is, where can I use the user observer? Any ideas? Where, when the user state changed, is like when he logged in or log out, what get changed? Where you should use this? App, navigation, what do you guys think? Definitely in the app, right? Because this is the app that have all the components. If he logged in, logged out, you can easily target, update the user current user state. So right here, and I want to listen to the user right when the page just started. So when the app start, I want to have this observer function to listen if there is a user going to sign in or sign out when the app just started. How can I do that? Use effect. And when the app use effect, as you know, take a function and a dependency. Since I want it to happen when the app just started, you put an empty dependency in that case. I need to import the user observer from Firebase. I'm exporting it. Good. So now, when the app first loaded, I'm going to execute the user observer and pass to it the function set current user. Now, I don't have to worry when the user log out, log in, because now that's the job for the observer. Okay, it will handle that for me. So if I go back here, see now, since I logged in, the current user have a value, and now I can log out the logout, I don't have the functionality for that right now. Let's add it quickly. So in my Firebase, I'm going to have a function, export constant logout. Let's go to the page, get started, and see how we can log out a user. Sign in, sign up. Okay, it's not that hard. It's just called sign out. It's a function here. Sign when you type sign out. That's the function that you need. So my logout function will simply sign out, and sign out take the auth object. As you can see, all the Firebase function, they should take the auth. This function take the auth as the first argument. Sign in with email and password, take the auth object as the first argument. Create a user, take the auth object as the first. So this is the logout functionality. And this logout, it's coming from the navigation bar. See here, this navigation bar, this bind. And now in my components in the navigation bar, I need to import this logout from the Firebase. And I'm going to look for the logout button. On click, I need to execute logout. And I'm going to actually, I don't want to just logging out the user. I want to log out and redirect him to the login page. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create here logout handler. I'm going to create a function referencing it and create the logout handler here. Logout handler, which is simply going to do two things. First, it's going to log out, use the logout function that I have. And second is navigate the user to the login page because he just signed out. Save that. Click here. Now take me to the login page. Can go to the register page. And now, any questions so far, guys? You see the use observer, once you load it in the home page, it will take care of always observing if there is a user who logged in or logged out. And it's a continuous process. If the user log in, it will update the current user with the current user who just logged in information. And if you take a look here, this is the user credential. This is the user information. This is the access token, email, display name, some meta tags. And this line is coming up from the Firebase line 3, which is once you log in here, because we're printing out the user credential. This is the user credential. This is the object that you get back from signing with an email and password. Any questions? Before we move on to the last task, which is going to be logging a user with Google or a provider. And that's actually coming from the straight up from the documentation. It's very, very simple. So you go down, existing user, next step, Google sign in. Click in Google sign in. And you go down there You see here, it's telling you it's optional, optional. So the first step, it's a must. You should get the Google Auth provider. Once, as you can see, it's a class, so you need to instantiate it, and you store it in a variable called provider. So I will copy this line, and I'm going to create a function here. Sign up with a provider. And I'm going to do a sync function and paste the line that I use it from the documentation. And this class, I need to import it from the Firebase here. So now I have access to this provider. This is the first step. This is an optional. Optional, you don't need it. The last step is to sign in with a pop-up window. You need a function called sign in with pop-up. And sign in with a pop-up. Here's the function. As you can see, it's an async function that takes two things, the auth object and the provider that we just created. So sign in with a pop-up, which is the pop-up screen that we have here. So if I click here, see this is the pop-up screen here. Okay. Let me close this. So I'm going to copy the name of this function because I need to import it from the Firebase. And the second line here, I'm going to paste this function that take the auth and the provider. And I need to await for it. Okay, it's an asynchronous process. And that's it. This is the only two lines to log in with Google. You get the Google Auth provider and the function sign in with the pop-up, and you pass the auth and the provider that you just initialize here. Okay, I have the functionality to log in with Google now account. I can go to my register page. I can minimize this. Constant sign up provider or provider. You can create a function, any function name you want, handler. And it's going to be a sync function. No, it doesn't have to be. But I need to import from Firebase I forget what I call it. Provide sign up. Let me go to here. Sign up provider. Pull out the sign up provider. And here in the provider handler, just execute the sign up provider. And of course, navigate the user to the home page because he just logged in with a Google account after he logged in with the Google account. So this is the provider handler. And when the user click in this bind, on click, provider handler. I didn't export it. Yeah, I didn't export it. Export, save. And now here, if I click in this bind, now it's redirect me to the home page and it's logging me with an account. Let's log in with this account. which is have my name from Google. It's logged me in. Perfect. And if you go to your app and you refresh here, you'll notice that there is another user that accessed or logged in with the or registered with the Google account. It's not an email and password. It's the provider is Google account. Nice. Let's add the same functionality to the login page, because he can, in the login page, he can log in with the provider account. So I'm going to create, actually, I'm going to copy this line, copy this function. I'm going to use the same function inside my login, which is using sign up provider from the Firebase. Save. And on click provider handler. Save it. And now either in the login, now I can log out. Also the login, he can log in with a Google account. He will have the pop-up screen. He can select any account that he have. Gonna log in here. It will get his name from Google account. And let's go log out. And the users also can log in with an email password. Okay. Sign up, log in. So we have one last functionality for the forget password. But before we proceed with the forget password, any questions, guys?
No, sir. Thank you.
No, thank you.
No, that's mean everything is hard, right? Again, it's I'm not expecting you. It would be great if you rewatch the video. That's how you gain the information and try to redo it yourself. That's how you practice and get the most out of the course. But definitely, if you have any question after the class or even tomorrow morning, you can reach me out by Slack. When you even try to do it by yourself, definitely you're gonna have some errors. Tell me, Slack me with any errors that you get. Just want to show you something really quick here. You have some templates. And one of the templates, you can have a template for email verification, reset password. This is the template here. You can change the template. It's just going to tell you, reset your password, the application name, follow this link to reset your password. And that's what the user will see when he click or when he have the reset functionality. It's a template that you can definitely update it or edit it, but I'm going to keep it the way it is. And in my Firebase here, I'm going to create a function, forgot password. Okay. And forget password. Let's see the documentation here. Password authentication. Mail and password next steps. This is the sign out. You can search anything you want here. So reset email. I know the name of the function. I just send password reset email. I just want to show you what is the process that you should follow if you couldn't find any documentation. The function is simply called, you're trying to send an email. It's called send password reset email. Okay. So this is the function that we gonna use and simply take the auth object and an email. So I will also try to use try and catch, because you might get an error message if you didn't provide the email as sync function, try catch, of course, constant here. If there is an error, I want to send back the error, so I can copy this line. And now I'm going to await send reset email. I'm going to use the auth and the email. Okay. And I can send the user a success message. So I'm going to return with a message here if I successfully was able to send the email. Tell him, please check your mailbox. So this is success message if everything went okay. However, if there's an error message, he also will see the error message. So if I go here to my application, email not defined, fresh, Firebase. Oh, so the forget password take an email. Okay. And this function, I have to actually use it in the login page. So I'm gonna import it, forget password, and in the forget password here, on click, I want to execute the on forget password. Got password, and I pass the email to it. Okay. So when the user click here, I will execute the forget password with the user email that he typed in. So now let's take a look. If I try to click forget password, forget password. Okay. Oh, because I get an error back. So yeah. So I need to actually create its own function. So to update the error message. So forget or forget password handler. Okay. So I'll need to create this function, constant forgot password handler. And in the forget password handler, it should be async, definitely. And it take an email, and I'm gonna call, I will receive a message, either success or failure message, and I need to await, execute the forget password, and pass the email to it. And now if message, if there is a message, which is definitely going to be a message, I want to set my error or set my message with this message. And now I should see any error messages. See, authentication network request failed. Okay, let me refresh. It should tell me to provide the password. Okay, let me put the email. Network request fail. Go register, login. Let me take a look here. The authentication. Let me take a look at the Firebase. Same password reset, email. Okay. Inspect. Console. A component is sharing uncontrolled input control, likely caused. Okay. Let's console log. Password. Just make sure that definitely I receive here this error message, but I just want to make sure. Let's console log the whole error. Save. Let me log in. Log out. And network request failed. Let me now inspect. Go. Email and password. Send password reset email. Okay. So I'll check this error and we're gonna continue tomorrow with this, but I'm not sure why I have this. I didn't have it with the original one that I created here. You can log in, you can type in the email and you click forget. Please check your mailbox. And if you go to mailbox, Gmail, and usually go to spam. So I have to check the spam folder. I'm gonna see what I'm doing wrong here. It's probably something that I'm there, but since we don't have much time today class, I'll debug it and let you know. Here, no reply. And this is the email that's coming, asking me to reset my password. So if I click here, now you can type in the new password, which I can type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, save. And now this is the new password. But again, we're gonna continue, probably gonna go over this function again tomorrow. And we're gonna continue with the actual API to fetch the movies. But for now, for today's class, we almost done with the authentication. We was able to register a user with the Firebase authentication, creating the markup for login page, register page, and the navigation bar. All right, I'm here for questions, guys. I'm open for questions. Again, as you can see.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. As you can see, as a developer, you always check documentation, even if something, you don't have to keep it on top of your head. You will see examples, all the documentation provide you with the codes that you need. You signing in a user, how you can get started. All these function names, I don't get it out of my head. I go check the documentation, and that's what you should do as a developer. Don't memorize anything. Okay, so tomorrow we're gonna be done from this project. We're gonna work on how we can interact with the movie API to fetch the movies and display them and present them with some other CSS tricks.